Assalamu alaikum, my brothers and my sisters, and please accept our warm welcome. You are watching Hadi TV. Today we are joined with a dear scholar, researcher, a person who has done numerous research on different narrations and ahadith based on the historical events of the first eras of Islamic history. Dear scholar and researcher, Muhammad Kazem Rajai. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I'm at your service.
We are so blessed to have you for today's session, especially at the session that we are about to reveal some historical evidence and proved narrations about a certain matter in the history of the Prophet lifetime, and which its consequences somehow continued after Prophet's, peace be upon him, lifetime.
Exactly.
As we heard in numerous proved narrations, it has been pointed out toward the high value and the status of her ladyship, Lady Fatima, peace be upon her, and her status in the eyes of the Prophet. And we have this particular hadith that Fatima biz'atu minni. And it's not being said by a simple or ordinary person, but it's being said by the Prophet, peace be upon him, the last Prophet, Prophet Muhammad. So when we get to this point that a character, a person has this important status into the eyes of the Prophet, it brings us to the question that how was the treatment that the society have given to Lady Fatima? And in particular, we have different narrations and stories about a gift which has been granted to her ladyship by the Prophet, peace be upon him. And the title of that gift is a garden, which its name is Fadak. Could you please reveal to us and shed some light upon this subject, that what is Fadak, where is it?
Thank you, dear brother. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa bihi nasta'in innahu khayrun nasiran wa mu'in. What you said is quite correct. What happened to Lady Fatima after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is pure tragedy. Lady Fatima went through a lot of hardship after Rasulullah, despite the fact that you can see in different narrations, the noble Prophet of Islam has pointed out that Lady Fatima is a part of his existence. Fatima bad'atun minni. And we have this narration. What you said about this narration is very important, because we have this narration in many different sources, Sunnite and Shiite, and because of that, this narration is very important. Okay, so Lady Fatima and her status is something which is proven for all Muslims. No one can deny her status in Islamic society, in Islamic concept. But the fact is, Lady Fatima was an oppressed person in the first era of Islamic nation, Islamic history. What you said about Fadak, let's go to the subject, which is Fadak. Fadak is actually a village in around 160 kilometers away from Medina, in the region of Hijaz. It's a very key strategic point in Hijaz, because Hijaz is a place with a very little amount of water. And this place, Fadak, is among only few places with enough water for farming and having different trees like nakhl, which is a very important nutrition for those people. Anyway.
So we were talking about a strategic point, a strategic region, which in the desert of Saudi Arabia at that time, it not only supplies water resources, but also had jungles, as we call them, if it's correct, for palm trees. And it was so rich with minerals, the soil, everything was so perfect. And of course, particularly in that region, the desert of Saudi Arabia in that time.
Yes, as you said, Fadak is a very important place. And among that desert, that was a very important place for Muslims. And the way it was granted to Lady Fatima is a controversial issue that we're going to get to this point in later, inshallah.
Another question that pops up here is that since the beginning, that region does not belong to the Muslim society. How does its ownership came toward the hands of Muslims? And by the way, in narrations and approved narrations, we have this, that the Prophet gifted this to her ladyship, Lady Fatima, peace be upon her. So when we were talking about a gift, it means that it was for the Prophet. It belongs to Prophet. How, in origins, how does it come toward the Prophet? How does the Muslims take over the Fadak?
It's a very good question. It's the start of the controversial issue, as I said. You know, Fadak belonged to Judaism. The Jew were the original inhabitants of this place. It's a village which is linked to Khaybar, another important place, another village with a lot of castles. And a lot of us, maybe all of us, know about what happened in Khaybar. Both Shiites and Sunnites know about the Battle of Khaybar and what happened on that time, but most of the people don't know what happened afterwards, which is the surrender of Fadak, the village, after this battle. You know, after the Battle of Khaybar, after the conquest of Khaybar, the Jews in Fadak, they were fearful of the army of Muslims. So they tried to surrender. They tried to come into terms with Rasulullah. So they accepted the terms, the surrender, to grant half of the village to the noble Prophet of Islam, and the other half remain in their possession, but with this condition that whenever Rasulullah ordered them, demanded them to leave the place, they would do so. So that's the point here. They surrendered and they gave the place to Rasulullah. We have many ayats about this point. That's actually the 6th and 7th verse of Surah Hashr. These verses point out this important fact that whenever a place is conquered by the Muslims without any fight, without going to war with that region, all those places which are conquered belong to Rasulullah. That's the point here. So Fadak, based on these ayat, belong to Rasulullah. After that, we have another ayah, وَآتَ ذَا الْغُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. That's the ayah that actually ordered Rasulullah to give away Fadak to Dhal Ghurba, the close relatives, his progeny actually. So based on this ayah, after the revelation of this ayah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Fadak to Lady Fatima as a gift. So that's the point here. I want to emphasize on this point, as a gift to Lady Fatima. That's the point here.
So in here we have a proof based on verses of Holy Quran that the ownership of Fadak handed over to the Prophet. And after that, and based on another verses, we have this clarified actually that this, after that, handed over as a gift to her ladyship. And may I ask you, when does it really occurred? When does it happen? Which year approximately?
It's not very clear. I think it was during the presence in Medina, around maybe the 7th year. 7th year of, after the Battle of Khaybar, actually.
So we were talking about the recent years that the glorious Battle of Khaybar was over, and Prophet handed this gift to her ladyship. But what we heard in the story at further years after the demise of the Prophet Muhammad is that something else happened to Fadak. The caliphs have done something different than what the Prophet advised all Muslims to do in order to treat her ladyship. Could you please shed some light upon that subject?
Yeah, that's a very tragic point in the Islamic history after the demise of Rasulullah. The first caliph took away Fadak from Lady Fatima based on this excuse that he wanted to unify the government's assets together to see how many and how much assets that they have. And he took it away from Lady Fatima, and his reason for doing so was just a fake narration. He made up himself for doing so, that Anbiya, the prophets, نحن معاشر الأنبياء لا نورث. That's the narration here. He said, the prophets, we, the prophets, he said from the tongue of Rasulullah, we, the prophets, don't inherit anything. That's the point here. So that was something he said. Lady Fatima stood against this point. You know, yes.
So you mean a gift, which it was a gift by Prophet himself to her ladyship, which it happened the time that Prophet was at complete health, actually. And the Prophet was governing the Islamic government that time. And it was her right, because it was a gift, not only something that she inherited from the Prophet. No, it was a gift at the time of her Prophet's life. It was taken away by relying on a narration that, as you mentioned, does that narration actually is correct? First of all, what I'm asking is about how proved is that narration? And if it's proved, does it really somehow justify this action?
The first point is, when you want to authenticate a narration, you have two ways of authenticating a narration. The first way is to go through the chain of transmitters to see whether there is a liar, a faker among them or not. And it's a very long process to do so. It needs for you to have a little bit of knowledge about Rijal, a specific science for doing so, for knowing the chain of transmitters and things like that. But there's another easier way for authenticating a narration. It's to actually compare the narration, the hadith, with the Noble Quran. Whenever you compare a hadith with Quran, it is proven if it's in contrast with the verses of Quran, that hadith is nothing but a fake. So when it comes to this specific narration, Abu Bakr said, نحن معاشر الأنبياء لا نورث شيئا. We, the prophets, don't inherit anything for the people. So when we go to the verses of Quran, we have actually ayat and verses in Quran referring to the inheritance of the prophets. That's the point here. We have the ayah, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانَ دَاوُودَ. وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانُ دَاوُودَ. That's the point here. The noble Quran says, Sulaiman, a prophet, inherited from Dawood, another prophet. So you cannot deny the specific and explicit point of Quran here. And we also have another ayah about inheritance of prophets. This ayah is about the story of Zakaria. You know, Zakaria was a person without any heir. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please give me an heir to inherit from me and from the household of Ya'qub. Okay? So you cannot deny these ayat.
So these are crystal clear evidence that they're not being narrated by someone, but they're exactly mentioned in the Holy Quran. And another question rises up here, that we're talking about right has been taken for granted by the first caliph of Sunni Muslims, if we can call it that way. The next question that pops into my mind is that, how did they do this? Do they just send a letter, okay, please grant us this property because it belongs to us? And what was her ladyship's response to that?
It wasn't very, it wasn't in a very good manners. They occupied the place. They forced the matter upon the hands of Lady Fatima. They just went ahead and said, this belongs to us. This belongs to the government. You don't have any say. You don't have any choice here. So they didn't ask nicely. They just went ahead and took it by force. That's the point here. There are many narrations about the process of taking away Fadak from Lady Fatima, but that's not the point here. I want to emphasize on the argument of Lady Fatima. That was a very important thing to discuss. You know, what I said about the verses of Quran is the argument of Lady Fatima. It's not something that I say. It is the argument of Lady Fatima. There's another argument from Lady Fatima. We can all accept it. No one can deny it. Is the point that this place, Fadak, the village, was given to Lady Fatima as a gift. It's not an inheritance from the noble Prophet of Islam. That's the difference here. So even if the narration is correct, even if the ayats weren't mentioned in Quran, that the story is something completely different. The Fadak, the village, is not an inheritance. It's a gift from Rasulullah during his lifetime, as you correctly mentioned. So that's the point here. You don't even reach the point to mention this fake narration.
Even if we want to neglect those verses, even if we don't want to pay any attention to them, yes, you're right, it's a gift. So you don't have any say on that matter, because it's not a property that, being handed over as an inheriting something. So you're quite right. May I ask you, because when we talk about Lady Fatima, we're not just talking about the daughter of the Prophet, but it has been mentioned in numerous narrations about her high status, her high position upon the beliefs, the characteristic. What was her reaction to this? What was her proofs? What was her idea? How did he confront those governors that they have taken the Fadak by force? And when we're talking about taking it by force, we're talking about taking something by force, not from an ordinary person, but from the Lady Fatima. The Lady Fatima that the Prophet says, Fatima biz'atu minni.
Yeah, it's a good question. At first, Lady Fatima tried to reason with them. Presenting these arguments is the way of, a civil way to start speaking with them, try to reasoning with them. At first, it's not an inheritance, it's a gift from my noble father to me during his lifetime when he was in complete health. The second reason, in the noble ayat of Quran, we have many mentioning of inheritance from a prophet to another person. So you cannot deny this point as well. And when they reached this point, the first caliph said, who are your witnesses for this claim that Rasulullah gave Fadak to you during his lifetime as a gift? Who are your witnesses? It's a very ridiculous question. You know why? Because they all knew what happened. They were all present when the ayah revealed to Rasulullah, وَآتِ ذَا الْغُرْبَى حَقًّا. They were all present at that time, and they all witnessed the action of handing over the village of Fadak to Lady Fatima. So that's why I say this is a very ridiculous question. They all knew it, but they wanted to, ignore it maybe. So he said, who are your witnesses? That was the time that maybe Lady Fatima was startled maybe. And at that very point, the immediate witnesses for Lady Fatima that maybe came to her mind were Ali alayhi salam, her noble husband, and Ayman. So, two witnesses, these are enough. These are completely enough for getting back the Fadak, the village of Fadak. But the point is, the first caliph said, Ali is your husband, he has a benefit here, I don't accept his I don't accept her as a witness. For Ayman, he says something quite controversial here. He said Ayman is a woman, and his shahada.
He cannot confess to anything.
Yeah, his shahada is not accepted.
The confession of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali alayhi salam that he had a glorious role in Khaybar, the Battle of Khaybar, it was denied because of being the husband of her ladyship, and Ayman was rejected because she was a woman.
Exactly.
But she was a human.
Exactly, that's the point here. About Ali alayhi salam, it's very tragic. Everything Ali alayhi salam did during his lifetime was serving Islam. Starting from his earliest time, he was 10-year-old when he accepted Islam as a religion. He never bowed against any idol. He did everything, starting from saving the life of Rasulullah in Laylatul Mabit, or in the war of Uhud, and many different occasions, and conquering a lot of places like Khaybar, and contributing anything he had in his power for Islam. They actually put him simply away. You cannot be a witness because you're husband of Fatima. You have a benefit here. And about Ayman, as you said, yes, she's a woman, but she is among the grand companion of Rasulullah as well. She was among those people who actually took part in the Battle of Uhud, but she was denied as well.
In here we were faced with a tragic event that the Caliph of Muslims denied the glorious role and the love and devotion that Ali ibn Abi Talib have proved in all his life. We have in different narrations, proved narrations, not only for Shiite but also for Sunni Muslims, about his role, about his history in being a Muslim, among the first who came to converted to Islam. But when we talk about first Caliph, we have different narrations that it was at least over 50 persons coming to Islam, and then Abu Bakr came into being a Muslim. So it all was denied. In here, the question is that what was the intention? What started this fire actually over there, and what becomes of Fadak afterward?
Good question. This time these points are very interesting in history. Because when it comes to history, we try to remember the numbers, the names, and things like that. But when it comes to these questions, usually starting with why, that's
the intentions. In here, it's like a mystery for me, because we're not talking about ordinary Muslims. We're talking about the nobles of the time. All of them were present at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, life. And they have, as if I can say it correct, they have a correct understanding, the perfect understanding of the Prophet's life. So why?
Exactly. These questions, starting with why, are very interesting in the subject of history. The intent, the agenda, hidden agenda for them for doing so is because they knew that they are usurpers of the caliphate, of the right of successorship after Rasulullah. They knew they're not right in doing so. So they wanted to empower themselves, but whatever they could and whatever they had in their possession. So they tried to weaken the other part, the other faction, and that faction being Lady Fatima.
Destroy their character, their face upon the public.
Not just that. That's the point here. But not just that. They wanted to actually take away the monetary power of the other faction. They knew if Lady Fatima and Amir al-Mu'mineen had Fadak in their possession, they could do many things. Because in tabligh, in preaching, in propagation, the first very important thing is having the monetary resources for doing so. So they knew if Fadak was in her possession, Lady Fatima could do many things in getting back the right of successorship, the caliphate from them. It's not just at the point that maybe Lady Fatima wanted to do so. No, that's not the point here. They were fearful of Lady Fatima that she might do so, and Ali alayhi salam might do so.
Of course, there was not a must or should on doing actions afterward, because it was a gift, and it was the Prophet's gift to whoever he wants, and the person who would take this could have done anything with that. Of course, there's no doubt in that. And could you please tell us what happened afterwards? What happened to Fadak?
Yeah, that's also another tragedy about Fadak. Right now, Fadak is in a province in Arabistan, in the Saudi Arabia. If I'm remembering correctly, it's the province of Ha'il, Al-Ha'il. Now the place is in ruins. Nothing remains there, and everything is lost. Fadak is lost now. Nothing remains. You can search the pictures about Fadak in the internet. Nothing is remaining now. But during those times, after the caliphates and after the caliphs and Lady Fatima, in the rulership of Abdul Aziz, I think, he was one of the maybe few people among Bani Umayyah, Umayyads, that he was a little bit good, maybe he remained a little bit good in himself. So he tried to give it back to the progeny of Rasulullah, the sons and
to the descendants
the
of
household,
the Prophet.
yes, the household of Fatima. But the point is, he only ruled for 2 years. Afterwards, they took it away again, until the time of Ma'mun, during the Abbasid era. He also tried to give it back to the household of Fatima as another good sign, good intent of himself. He wasn't a good Samaritan here. No, he just wanted to do so because of his political agenda.
To justify the public.
Yeah, to justify the public, because he actually ordered Imam al-Rida alayhi salam to be his heir. He wanted to show that, yes, I have this good intent towards the household of Fatima, household of Rasulullah. So he tried to give it back to the household of Rasulullah again, but after him it was taken away as well. And we don't have anything in historical points about the fate of Fadak afterwards until now that we know. It's just a ruin and nothing remains now.
It was so tragic because at one point it was happened by the noble Muslims, those who they were the Prophet's companion, and they were supposed to be an idol, a symbol of a true resemblance of the Prophet. But they easily for granted their position, their status, and they neglect the essence of Islamic ruling. And at the other side, the tragic part is that to whom it happened, it does not happen to an ordinary person, but it was happened to a part of the Prophet himself, as the famous narration of Fatima Bis'atu Minni. Thank you very much, dear scholar, and it was a pleasure to be with you, to have you on our side, and thank you very much for shedding a lot of lights upon these subjects and having proof for them on narrations and ahadith. For in her ladyship's life, in every essence of Lady Fatima life, there is symbols and resemblance of Prophet's manners. And those manners, those behaviors could be a perfect idol for us, for our everyday life. And it will lead us to nowhere but to the salvation. So inshallah, all of us could do in our actions in a manner that it's preferred by her ladyship. May God bless you all. Thank you for joining us. God bless you.